In this episode, we will advance in time to approximately the year 5000 BC, a period of profound transformations that shaped the European continent as we know it. We are at the height of the Neolithic, the so-called agricultural revolution, when European peoples left behind the nomadic life of hunter-gatherers and began to master the land, laying the foundations of the civilization that would flourish. Around 5000 BC, Europe had already overcome the rigors of the last glacial maximum. The climate had become milder, with the retreat of glaciers and the advance of dense forests across much of the continent. The descendants of those first modern humans, who had arrived tens of thousands of years earlier, now occupied vast regions, adapted not only to the environment but also to a new way of life, agriculture and animal husbandry. The map accompanying this episode reveals a Europe divided into large cultural complexes, each with distinct characteristics, but all marked by the advance of sedentarization. At the heart of the continent stands out the Danubian complex culture, also known as Indo-European in its origins, spread along the great rivers such as the Danube and the Rhine. These peoples were the pioneers of intensive agriculture in Central Europe. They cultivated wheat, barley, lentils, and raised cattle, sheep, and pigs. Their villages consisted of rectangular wooden houses, up to 100 meters long, housing extended families. Linear pottery, decorated with incised lines, was one of their trademarks, as was the use of polished stone tools. To the south, in the Iberian Peninsula, the Tardenois culture flourished, a transition between the world of hunters and that of farmers. Still tied to Mesolithic traditions but already incorporating Neolithic elements, such as cardial pottery, decorated with shell impressions. These peoples occupied the Mediterranean coast and the interior of Spain and Portugal, exploiting fertile soils for the initial cultivation of cereals. Further west, in southern France and northern Iberia, we find the Asturian culture, with a strong emphasis on coastal exploitation and shellfish gathering, but already adopting agriculture on a small scale. In Greece and the Balkans, the Sesklo culture reveals the first signs of a more complex society, with planned villages, painted pottery, and even primitive sanctuaries, indicating the emergence of organized spirituality. In southeastern Europe, the Starcevo culture represents the cradle of Neolithic expansion from the Balkans. These peoples, directly influenced by the Fertile Crescent, brought with them the seeds of the agricultural revolution: emmer wheat, barley, domesticated goats and sheep. Their houses were smaller, with a square layout, and their obsidian tools indicate trade networks that already extended to the Aegean Sea. It is impossible to discuss this period without mentioning the external influences that shaped Europe. The Neolithic Revolution did not originate on the continent, but was imported from the Near East, specifically from the Fertile Crescent region, where peoples like the Natufians, in present-day Israel and Jordan, had domesticated the first plants and animals around 10,000 BC. From there, agriculture spread via two main routes, one along the Mediterranean, reaching Greece and Italy, and the other along the Danube, arriving in Central Europe. They mixed with local hunter-gatherer populations, transmitting techniques that transformed European demographics. In the north, the Moglamosian culture, in Scandinavia and the British Isles, still resisted agriculture, maintaining an economy based on hunting, fishing, and gathering. Their artifacts of bone and deer antler show a brilliant adaptation to boreal forests. To the east, the Pontic culture, in the steppes north of the Black Sea, began domesticating the horse, an advance that would revolutionize mobility and warfare in the following millennia. One of the most striking features of this period is the emergence of the first major communal constructions. In Brittany and France, the megaliths of Karnak and Stonehenge rise, alignments of stones that served as astronomical calendars or places of worship. In the Iberian Peninsula, tholoi, collective stone tombs, indicate a concern with ancestry and the afterlife. In the Halaf culture, in northern Mesopotamia, although outside Europe, we see polychrome ceramics that influence decorative patterns in the eastern Mediterranean. Livestock breeding brought food security. The first surpluses allowed population growth and labor specialization. The first artisans and community leaders emerge. Women, often associated with the fertility of the land, gain centrality in cults. Mother goddess figurines, like those found in the Cucutini Tripilia culture in present-day Ukraine and Romania, though slightly later, have roots in this period. War, though still incipient, begins to appear. Fortifications in Sesklo and Dimini, in Greece, indicate conflicts over resources. Polished stone axes served both for work and defense. Land ownership becomes a real concept, and with it, the need to protect it. Around 5000 BC, Europe was no longer a continent of nomads. It was a mosaic of farming peoples, herders, and builders, united by exchange networks that crossed mountains and seas. Copper begins to be worked in Serbia, in the Vinca culture, heralding the Metal Age. The wheel is invented in the Pontic steppes. Writing is still far off, but symbols on pottery and clay tablets already suggest a desire to record. This was the moment when Europe planted the seeds, literally, of everything that would come later: cities, states, empires. From the fields of the Danube to the megaliths of the Atlantic, they transformed the wild continent into a permanent home. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and don't miss the next one.